So after everything I did for you, you went out and cheated on me? The kids aren't mine.
Please, I can.
How could you? How I made sure you never lack.
Please, baby, listen. It was my ex.
Nigerian story: rich man discovers triplets not his. The night before the wedding. December 1999. The Harmattan wind carried dust through the streets of Lagos, coating everything in a fine gray film. Cars, windows, the leaves of the mango trees that lined the wealthy neighborhoods of Victoria Island. Inside the penthouse of Eco Towers, Adelaja Bamidele stood before his floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the evening sun bleed orange across the lagoon. His reflection hovered in the glass, a ghost superimposed over the city he had built himself inside. Tomorrow, he would marry Mornike. At 34, Adelaja had built an empire from the ground up, brick by brick, contract by contract. His construction company, Bamidele and Sons, though there were no sons yet, only the dream of them, had secured contracts for 3 of the newest bridges in Lagos, including the Lekki-Ikoyi Link Bridge that was already transforming the city's skyline. His real estate portfolio stretched from Ikoyi to Lekki Phase 1, from Victoria Garden City to the emerging satellite towns along the Lagos-Ibadan corridor. His name carried weight in boardrooms across West Africa, and when he spoke at industry conferences, young men in ill-fitting suits took notes and whispered to each other, "That is Adelaja. That is what success looks like." But standing there, adjusting the intricate folds of his agbada for the 10th time, he felt like a boy again, nervous, hopeful, utterly convinced that Mornike was the best thing life had ever offered him, and terrified, in the quiet spaces of his heart, that he did not deserve her. The agbada was cream-colored brocade, hand-embroidered with gold thread by the same elderly tailor in Ibadan who had made his father's wedding clothes 40 years ago. Adelaja had traveled to Ibadan personally to commission it, sitting in the tailor's cramped, fabric-choked shop while the old man measured his shoulders, his chest, the length of his arms. He had told no one about this pilgrimage. Some things were too sacred for announcement. His mother had cried when he showed her the finished garment. She had not spoken clearly since her stroke. The words came slowly now, thick and halting, but her eyes had said everything. Your father would be proud. Adelaja had held her hand and not trusted himself to speak. His phone buzzed on the marble console table, rattling against a crystal dish that held his cufflinks. Femi, abeg, you don't sleep? Omo, your bachelor party day worry me oh. You sure say you ready? Adelaja smiled. Femi had been his friend since their days at Government College, Ibadan, where they had met as 14-year-olds assigned to adjacent beds in the crowded dormitory. Femi's father was a mid-level civil servant who could barely afford the school fees. Adelaja's father was a prosperous building contractor who paid for both boys without ever making a show of it. They had shared everything in those years: textbooks, pocket money, dreams of the men they would become. They had stood together at Adelaja's father's funeral, 18 years old and still children in every way that mattered. And Femi had gripped his arm and said, "I'm not going anywhere. You hear me? I'm not going anywhere." Femi had kept that promise. He had stayed through Adelaja's mother's stroke, through the lean years when Adelaja's inheritance was mismanaged and his father's company nearly collapsed, through the slow, painstaking rebuilding of Bamidele and Sons into the powerhouse it had become. He had accepted the position of general manager at Eco Hotels without resentment, building his own career while cheering for his friends. And tonight, he had insisted on hosting Adelaja's bachelor party at the hotel's new rooftop lounge, a glass-walled wonder overlooking the lagoon, with a champagne bar and a live band and a guest list that read like a who's who of Lagos commerce. "I'm ready," Adelaja replied. "More ready than I've ever been." He paused, then added, "Thank you. For everything." Femi's response came immediately. "Egbin wedding concern thank you? A beg. Just make sure you show your face before midnight. Your people day ask where you day." Adelaja didn't reply. He set down the phone and turned back to the window. He had first seen Mornike 3 years ago, at her cousin's wedding. He had not wanted to attend. He was 31 years old, the CEO of a rapidly expanding company, and his schedule was a fortress of meetings and site inspections and contract negotiations. Weddings were obligations, not pleasures. Opportunities for elderly aunties to ask why he was still single and for business rivals to measure his success by the cut of his agbada. But his mother had insisted. The bride was the daughter of her oldest friend from secondary school, the one who had sat with her through the long months of rehabilitation after the stroke, reading aloud from the newspaper and feeding her pounded yams softened in warm water. "You will go," his mother had written on her whiteboard, her left hand shaking as she formed the letters. "You will represent our family. You will not embarrass me." So he had gone. The wedding was at the Cathedral Church of Christ, Marina, and it was the kind of elaborate, multi-day affair that Lagos society did so well. Adelaja had endured the church service with patient stoicism, nodded through the endless speeches at the reception, and was contemplating an early exit when he saw her. She was standing near the dessert table, laughing at something her cousin had said. Her head was thrown back, her mouth open, her whole body participating in the joy of the moment. She was unself-conscious and bright, utterly unaware that she was being watched, and Adelaja felt something shift inside his chest. A door opening, a curtain drawing back, a space he hadn't known was empty, suddenly recognizing what it was meant to hold. He asked his mother about her the next day. His mother's eyes had widened, then softened. "That is more Nike," she wrote. "Accountant. Very smart. Very kind. Her mother says she has refused 3 good proposals because she is waiting for something. She doesn't know what." "I know," Adelaja thought. "She's waiting for me." It took him 6 months to convince her to go on a first date. He courted her patiently, respectfully, showing up at her office with flowers and retreating immediately so as not to embarrass her. He sent handwritten letters, not emails, not texts, but actual letters on cream-colored paper, sealed with wax, expressing his admiration and his hope that she might consider giving him a chance. He attended her church, sitting in the back pew, waiting for the service to end so he could walk past her and say good morning. "You are persistent," she told him finally, after he had asked her to dinner for the 7th time. "I'll give you that." "I am patient," he corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Persistence is trying again when something doesn't work. Patience is knowing that some things take time and being willing to wait. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. Not the full, unguarded laugh he had fallen in love with at the wedding, but something smaller, more careful. "Okay," she said. "Dinner. Friday." That was 18 months ago. He had proposed on the balcony of his penthouse, the lagoon glittering below, a diamond solitaire in his trembling hand. She had said yes. He had wept. She had laughed and cried and kissed his wet cheeks. "I will spend the rest of my life making you happy," he promised. She had closed her eyes and held him tightly. She had not said anything at all. His phone buzzed again. This time it was his mother's nurse, sending an update. "Mama has eaten well. She is resting. She says to tell you she will be at the church tomorrow even if she has to crawl there." Adelaja smiled and typed back. "Tell her I will send the car at 8. She is not to crawl anywhere." He thought about his mother, alone in the Ibadan house where he had grown up, surrounded by photographs of his father and the ghost of the life they had all lived before the stroke stole her words. He thought about how hard she had fought to recover, how she had wept with frustration over her uncooperative left side, how she had refused to be defined by her limitations. He thought about the way her face had transformed when he told her about more Nike. The joy, the relief, the unspoken prayer finally answered. "Your father would have loved her," she had written. "He always said you would marry someone with light in her eyes." Adelaja hoped his father was watching. He hoped his father was proud. Across the city, in a modest flat in Acacia, Mornike sat on the edge of her bed and stared at her phone. The screen glowed with a message she had read a dozen times. 24 times. More times than she could count. "Bayo, I'm in Lagos. Just for 2 weeks. Please, Nike, just to see you. One last time. Before you become somebody's wife. Bayo." She had met Bayo a Quintala 9 years ago at a friend's New Year's Eve party. He was 27, handsome in an effortless way, recently returned from his MBA in Manchester and full of stories about life in England. He had approached her at the drinks table, complimented her earrings, asked her name. By midnight, they were kissing on the balcony while fireworks exploded over Lagos. He had courted her with an intensity that was both exhilarating and unsettling. He sent flowers daily, called 3 times a night, talked endlessly about the future they would build together. "I'm going back to UK in a few months," he told her, "but I'll send for you. As soon as I'm settled. We'll get married there, start a family. You'll love it, Nike. London in autumn. The leaves change color. Everything is gold and red. We'll walk through Hyde Park on Sundays. We'll have beautiful children who speak with British accents." She believed him. She believed him for 4 years. The phone calls grew shorter, less frequent. The promised visa never materialized. His excuses became more elaborate. The economy was bad. His job was demanding. The timing wasn't right. She spent her 28th birthday alone, waiting for a call that came 3 days late, apologetic and vague. "Just a little longer," he said. "I promise. Just a little longer." She waited. She believed. She told herself that love was patient, that distance was temporary, that he would come back for her as he had promised. Then her cousin got married, and she laughed at something someone said, and she looked up to find a man in a perfect agbada staring at her like she was the answer to a prayer he had been whispering for years. Adelaja was not Bayo. Adelaja did not promise futures he could not deliver. Adelaja showed up, consistently, reliably, with flowers and letters and patient hope. Adelaja looked at her like she was precious, not like she was an option he might or might not exercise. She had told herself, when she accepted his proposal, that she was choosing the man who was present over the man who was absent. She was choosing certainty over possibility, stability over longing. She was choosing a life of quiet, dependable love over the exhausting roller coaster of waiting for someone who might never come. She had told herself that Bayo was the past, Adelaja was the future, and now Bayo was in Lagos, and her phone was burning in her hand, and she could not stop reading his words. One last time, his message said, "Just to say goodbye properly. No strings. I need to see you, Nike. Please." She should delete the message. She should block his number. She should think about Adelaja, about the wedding tomorrow, about the life waiting for her, the life she had chosen, the life she wanted, the life she deserved. Instead, she typed, "Where?" His response came immediately, "Eco Hotels. Room 1412. I'll be waiting." Eco Hotels. The same hotel where Adelaja's bachelor party was happening, at this very moment, on the rooftop lounge. The same hotel where Femi, Adelaja's best friend, the man who had helped him choose her engagement car, was hosting 200 of Lagos's elite. "Are you insane?" She typed. "His friends are there. His best friend is the manager. Someone will see me. No one will see you. I've booked a room on a different floor. The bachelor party is on the rooftop. You can come through the side entrance, take the service elevator. No one will know." She stared at the message. She should say no. She should say this is a terrible idea. She should say I am getting married tomorrow and I cannot see you ever again. She typed, "I'll be there in an hour." The side entrance of Eco Hotels was dimly lit, tucked between the loading dock and the staff parking area. Nike had never noticed it before. She had always entered through the grand lobby, with its soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers and the attentive staff who greeted her by name. Tonight, she slipped through the service door like a shadow, her yellow dress, a simple cotton shift, nothing like the elaborate wedding gown hanging in her mother's house, rustling against her thighs. The service elevator was slow, creaking. She watched the floor numbers change with each lurching ascent. 3, 5, 7, 9, 12, 14. Her reflection stared back at her from the burnished metal doors, a woman she barely recognized, her face smooth and expressionless, her hands steady at her sides. She did not feel steady. Room 1412 was at the end of a long, carpeted corridor. The air smelled of air freshener and old cigarette smoke. She knocked once, softly, and the door opened almost immediately. Bayo. He looked older, not older in a bad way, but matured. His jaw was sharper, his shoulders broader, his temples touched with the first whisper of gray. He was wearing a white shirt, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and when he smiled, it was the same smile that had once made her believe she could wait forever. "Nike." His voice was soft. "You came. I shouldn't be here." "No, you shouldn't." He stepped aside. "But I'm glad you did." She crossed the threshold. The room was impersonal. Hotel art on the walls, a made bed with too many pillows, a bottle of red wine breathing on the table. Bayo moved toward the wine, uncorked it with practiced ease, poured 2 glasses. "I'm getting married tomorrow," she said, not touching hers. "I know." He set down the bottle. "I saw the announcement in the papers. Adelaja Bamadil, the bridge man, the real estate king." He paused. "He's a big man. Oh, very big man." "Yes, he is. Are you happy?" Nike looked at him. She thought about Adelaja's face when he looked at her, the wonder, the gratitude, the certainty that she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. She thought about his letters, his patience, his quiet, steady love. She thought about the life she would wake up to tomorrow, a husband who adored her, a home he had built with her in mind, a future that was solid and certain and safe. I chose him, she said. That should tell you everything. Bayo nodded slowly. He picked up his wine, swirled it, set it down again. I should have come back. I should have, he stopped. Shook his head. It doesn't matter now. No, it doesn't. They stood in silence. Outside, Lagos hummed with its usual chaos. Horns blaring, generators coughing, the distant thrum of nightlife beginning to stir. Somewhere above them, on the rooftop lounge, a band was playing music for her almost husband and his 200 guests. I just wanted to see you, Bayo said. One more time. To remember what this was. What we were. We were young, Nike whispered. We were stupid. Were we? He stepped closer. I don't feel like it was stupid. I feel like it was the only real thing I ever had. She should leave. She knew she should leave. Her wedding dress was hanging in her mother's house. A cascade of white lace and hand-embroidered pearls, each pearl sewn on by her grandmother's trembling fingers. Her future husband was probably dancing right now, laughing with friends, counting hours until he could call her his wife. Her mother was probably asleep, dreaming of the daughter she would give away tomorrow, trusting that the man she had prayed for had finally arrived. But Bayo's hand was reaching for hers, and his skin was warm, and his eyes were the same eyes that had looked at her across a candlelit table 9 years ago and told her she was the beginning and end of every good thing in his life. This doesn't mean anything, she said. After tonight, we never see each other again. After tonight, he agreed. He kissed her. She kissed him back. The wine remained untouched. The bedclothes tangled. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. At some point, she heard distant applause from the rooftop. A toast, a speech, her almost husband's voice carried away by the wind. She closed her eyes and tried not to hear it. When she finally left, the harmattan had grown colder, and her yellow dress was wrinkled, and her carefully applied lipstick was gone. She took the service elevator again, slipped out the side entrance, walked to her silver Corolla with her head down. She did not see Femi watching from the lobby. Femi had not meant to be in the lobby. He had stepped away from the bachelor party to check on the banquet schedule for tomorrow's wedding breakfast. 1,000 tiny details, each one demanding his attention. The hotel was his domain, his responsibility, and even with his best friend celebrating upstairs, he could not stop being the general manager. He was reviewing the seating chart at the concierge desk when he saw her. A woman in a yellow dress, moving quickly across the lobby. Not toward the elevators, not toward the exit, but toward the side corridor that led to the service entrance. Her head was down, her hair slightly disheveled, her movements furtive. Femi knew that walk. He had seen it before, in hotel lobbies all over Lagos. The guilty haste of someone who had been somewhere they shouldn't have been, doing something they shouldn't have done. He did not recognize her at first. The light was dim, her face averted, her posture entirely unlike the poised, elegant woman who had sat beside Adelaja at countless dinners and events. It was only when she paused at the door, glancing back as if to ensure she wasn't being followed, that he saw her clearly. Nike. Adelaja's Nike. His best friend's bride-to-be, who was supposed to be at home resting for the biggest day of her life, not sneaking out of a hotel at 11 p.m. in a wrinkled dress and ruined lipstick. Femi's hand stilled on the seating chart. He watched her push through the service door, watched it swing shut behind her. He did not move. He did not breathe. He stood there, frozen, while the concierge asked him something about breakfast mints, and he did not hear a word. Then he walked to the car park. He told himself he was not sure. He told himself there could be 100 reasons why Adelaja's fiancé was leaving his hotel at this hour. Maybe she had come to surprise Adelaja, to steal a private moment before tomorrow's chaos. Maybe she had a friend staying here, a relative in town for the wedding. Maybe. He reached the car park. The silver Corolla was parked near the back, engine still ticking as it cooled. He knew that car. He had helped Adelaja choose it, had negotiated with the dealer for weeks to get the best price. She deserves something reliable, Adelaja had said. Something safe. I want her to feel protected every time she drives. Femi stood in the car park, looking at the silver Corolla, and understood that his best friend's happiness was built on a foundation that was not, had never been, solid. He walked back inside. He took the elevator to the rooftop. He rejoined the party, poured himself a whiskey, and watched Adelaja laugh with his guests. I can't tell him, he decided. Not now. Not ever. Some truths are too heavy. Some love is too precious. He buried the secret deep, locked it away, and told himself it would stay buried. But the question haunted him, even as he raised his glass to toast the happy couple, even as he smiled and clapped and pretended everything was exactly as it should be. Are you sure she's faithful? December 18th, 1999, 6 a.m. Mornike woke in her childhood bed, in her mother's house, to the sound of women singing. The traditional wedding preparations had begun. Her aunties were in the kitchen, pounding yam and stirring stew. Her cousins were arranging her geli in the next room, arguing about the proper fold. Her mother stood at the doorway, already dressed in her own elaborate iro and buba, tears streaming down her face. My baby, she whispered. My baby is getting married today. Mornike sat up slowly. Her body ached. She had slept barely 2 hours, her mind circling endlessly through the events of the previous night. The hotel room. Bayo's hands. The guilt that had settled into her chest like stone. She looked at her mother's face, so proud, so happy, so completely unaware, and felt something inside her crack. Mummy, she said, I need to tell you something. Her mother crossed the room, sat on the edge of the bed, took her daughter's hands. What is it, my love? Cold feet? Every bride gets cold feet. No, it's not. Mornike stopped. The words were there, pressing against her teeth, demanding to be spoken. I saw another man last night. I slept with him. I betrayed the man I'm marrying today. But her mother was smiling, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Your father would have been so proud, she had said last night, pressing Mornike's wedding gown into its garment bag. He always said you would find someone who deserved you. Someone like Adelaja. Mornike opened her mouth, closed it. Nothing, she said. Just nerves. I'm just nervous. Her mother patted her hand. Of course you are. Every bride is nervous. But Adelaja is a good man, Mornike. A very good man. You will be happy with him. Yes, Mornike thought. I will be happy. I will be a good wife. I will deserve him. I will spend the rest of my life making up for last night. She let her mother help her out of bed, into her wrapper, toward the waiting circle of women who would prepare her for the most important day of her life. She did not look back. December 18th, 1999, 11 a.m. The Cathedral Church of Christ, Marina, was filled to capacity. Adelaja stood at the altar, his cream-colored ibada heavy on his shoulders, his palms damp inside the embroidered fabric. Beside him stood his best man, Femi, solemn and supportive, his earlier unease hidden behind a carefully constructed smile. In the front pew sat his mother, propped up by pillows, and her nurse, her good hand clutching a handkerchief. The organ swelled. The congregation rose. And Mornike appeared at the end of the aisle, radiant in white, her face glowing behind the sheer veil. Adelaja forgot to breathe. She walked toward him slowly, steadily, her hand resting on her uncle's arm. The lace of her gown whispered against the marble floor. Her bouquet of white orchids trembled slightly in her grip. Behind the veil, her eyes were fixed on his face, and for a moment, a single, fleeting moment, he saw something flicker across her expression. Fear, doubt, regret? Then she smiled, and the moment passed, and Adelaja told himself he had imagined it. She reached the altar. Her uncle placed her hand in Adelaja's. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was steady. You look beautiful, he whispered. Thank you, she whispered back. The priest began to speak. Adelaja heard none of it. He was lost in the reality of her presence, the weight of her hand in his, the knowledge that after today, after this moment, she would be his wife. I will spend the rest of my life making you happy, he had promised. Standing at the altar, watching her face through the delicate lace of her veil, he believed it with his whole heart. He did not know that she had spent the previous night in another man's arms. He did not know that his best friend was standing 3 feet away, carrying a secret that would eventually destroy them both. He did not know that the children they would conceive, the children he would love with every fiber of his being, were not his own. He knew nothing except this. The woman he loved was smiling at him. And in this moment, in this church, with the congregation holding its breath and the organ playing and his mother weeping quietly in the front pew, everything was perfect. He kissed his bride. The congregation erupted in applause. And Adelaja Bamidil walked down the aisle with Mornike's hand in his, believing that his happiness had finally, truly begun. December 18th, 1999, 11 p.m. The reception was over. The last guests had departed. Adelaja and Mornike sat in the back of his Mercedes, driven by his longtime chauffeur, winding through the quiet streets of Victoria Island toward their honeymoon suite at Eco Hotels. Mornike stared out the window. Adelaja watched her profile, the curve of her cheek, the way the streetlights caught the diamonds in her wedding jewelry. Nike, he said softly. She turned. Yes. Thank you. For today. For everything. He paused, searching for words that could contain the enormity of what he felt. I never thought I would have this. A wife. A family. Someone to come home to. His voice caught. You've given me everything I ever wanted. She looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were dark, unreadable. You deserve to be happy, she said. You deserve someone who, she stopped. Swallowed. Someone who what? She shook her head. Nothing. I'm just tired. It's been a long day. It has. He took her hand, raised it to his lips. Rest now. We have the rest of our lives. She nodded. She turned back to the window. And somewhere, in the darkness outside the car, Lagos glittered and hummed and carried on, indifferent to the promises being made and the secrets being kept. The night before was over. The marriage had begun. The weight of a secret. December 1999 to December 2000. The honeymoon suite at Eco Hotels was on the 20th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lagoon and a king-sized bed draped in ivory linens. Adelaja had booked it months in advance, requesting specific details: fresh orchids on the nightstand, a bottle of Dom Perignon on ice, rose petals scattered across the duvet in the shape of a heart. Mornike stood at the threshold, still in her wedding gown, and looked at the carefully arranged romance of the room. Too much? Adelaja asked, suddenly uncertain. I told Femi to keep it simple, but you know how he is. It's beautiful, she said. It's perfect. But she did not sound like a woman who had just married the man she loved. She sounded like a woman who was very, very tired. Adelaja crossed the room, touched her elbow gently. We don't have to do anything tonight. We can just sleep. You must be exhausted. She looked at him then, and something in her face shifted, softened, opened. You're always thinking of me, she whispered. Always taking care of me. That's what husbands do. Is it? She reached up, touched his face. Her fingers were cold against his cheek. I don't know if I deserve. He kissed her before she could finish. She kissed him back, and for a few hours, she forgot about Bayo and hotel rooms and the weight of what she had done. She was here, with her husband, beginning her marriage. The past was the past. Tomorrow, she would start becoming the woman Adelaja believed her to be. But that night, long after Adelaja had fallen asleep with his arm draped across her waist, Mornike lay awake and stared at the ceiling. The orchids on the nightstand released their faint, sweet fragrance. The lagoon glittered beyond the window. Her husband breathed softly beside her. You deserve to be happy, she had told him. You deserve someone who had not lain in another man's arms the night before her wedding. Someone who had not traded his trust for a moment of weakness. Someone who was not, at her core, exactly the kind of woman she had always promised herself she would never become. She closed her eyes and waited for morning. The honeymoon was 14 days. Santorini, Paris, Dubai. Adelaja had planned every detail with the same meticulous attention he brought to his construction projects. In Santorini, he had booked a cave suite carved into the volcanic cliff, with a private terrace overlooking the caldera. They watched the sunset paint the whitewashed buildings in shades of amber and rose, and Adelaja held her hand and said nothing, because some moments were too beautiful for words. In Paris, he took her to the Eiffel Tower, to the Louvre, to a tiny restaurant in the Marais where the chef remembered his parents from their own honeymoon 37 years ago. Your father, the chef said, his eyes wet. He always ordered the coq au vin. Your mother laughed at his French pronunciation. I have never forgotten that sound. Adelaja ordered the coq au vin. Mornike watched him eat it, his face quiet and reflective, and felt the weight of all the history she had married into. The love stories and griefs, the hopes passed down like heirlooms, the legacy of a man she would never meet, but whose son she had promised to cherish. In Dubai, they stayed at the Burj Al Arab, in a suite larger than her mother's entire flat. Adelaja bought her diamonds at the gold souk, a watch with diamonds around the face, a handbag she had admired in a magazine months ago and mentioned exactly once. You remembered, she said, her voice catching. Of course I remembered, he replied. I remember everything you tell me. She wore the watch every day. She never took it off. It was a talisman, a reminder of the man she had married and the woman she was supposed to become. But at night, when Adelaja slept, she lay awake and thought about Bayo, about his hands, his voice, the way he had said, I need to see you, Nike. Please. About the sons they might have had, the life she had waited for years for, the future that had never arrived. Stop it, she told herself. Stop thinking about him. You chose Adelaja. You made a vow. This is your life now. But the thoughts did not stop. They simply waited, patient and persistent, for moments when her guard was down. January 2000. They returned to Lagos in the first week of the new year. The harmattan was still blowing, dusting the city in its familiar gray film, but Adelaja barely noticed. He was too happy. His house, their house, he corrected himself, welcomed them with fresh flowers and a stocked refrigerator and the smell of the lemon polish the housekeeper used on the mahogany furniture. He carried more Nike across the threshold, ignoring her protests that she was too heavy, that he would hurt his back, that this was a silly tradition anyway. I've been waiting to do this since I bought the house, he said, setting her down gently in the foyer. 4 years ago, when I signed the papers, I stood right here and thought, one day, I'll carry my wife across this threshold. Today is that day. More Nike looked at the house, the soaring ceilings, the artfully arranged furniture, the family photographs he had placed on the mantelpiece. His mother on her wedding day, his father at the opening of his first building, Adelaja as a boy, missing his front teeth, grinning at the camera with unguarded joy. Your father, she said. What was he like? Adelaja was quiet for a moment. He was kind, he said finally. Firm, but kind. He believed that success meant nothing if you didn't lift others as you climbed. He paid school fees for children in his village, built a clinic in his mother's name, employed men who couldn't find work anywhere else. He paused. He used to say that the measure of a man is not how high he rises, but how many people he brings with him. He sounds like he was a good man. He was the best man I ever knew. Adelaja looked at her. Until I met you, I didn't think I would ever be half the person he was. But you make me want to be better. You make me believe I can be. More Nike felt the words like a physical weight, pressing down on her chest. She wanted to tell him the truth. She wanted to fall to her knees and confess everything. The hotel room, Bayo, the betrayal that had stained the hours before their vows. She wanted him to forgive her or condemn her, anything except stand here and look at her with such complete, undeserved faith. Instead, she smiled. You're already better than you know, she said. Your father would be proud. He kissed her forehead. I hope so. February 2000. More Nike woke one morning with her stomach heaving. She made it to the bathroom just in time, collapsing against the cool porcelain of the toilet bowl as her body emptied itself of the previous night's dinner. Adelaja was beside her in an instant, his hand on her back, his voice urgent with concern. Nike, what's wrong? Should I call a doctor? Give me. She gasped, swallowed, tried to steady her breathing. Give me a minute. He waited, his hand a steady pressure between her shoulder blades. When the nausea finally passed, he helped her to her feet, guided her to the sink, held back her hair as she rinsed her mouth. This is the second time this week, he said. You need to see a doctor. It's probably just something I ate. You barely ate anything yesterday. You've barely eaten anything all week. He was looking at her in the mirror, his reflection serious and worried. Nike, I'm calling Dr. Ajayi. She wanted to argue, but another wave of nausea rolled through her, and she gripped the sink and waited for it to pass. Something was forming in her mind, a possibility she had been too afraid to name, too guilty to acknowledge. Please, she thought, though she did not know who she was praying to or what she was asking for. Please let it be his. Please let this child be Adelaja's. Dr. Ajayi confirmed the pregnancy the following afternoon. Approximately 6 weeks, he said, reviewing the test results. Given the timeline, conception likely occurred around. He consulted his calendar. Mid-December. Mornike's mind went blank. She had married Adelaja on December 18th. The night before, the hotel room, Bayo. Congratulations, Dr. Ajayi was saying, beaming at them both. Mr. Bamadil, you're going to be a father. Adelaja burst into tears. Mornike watched him fall to his knees beside her chair, his hands pressing against her still flat stomach, his shoulders shaking with sobs. She watched his joy overflow, unchecked and unbidden, filling the examination room with its radiant intensity. "A child," he whispered. "Our child. Nike, I never thought. I never knew I could be this happy." She touched his hair, his head bowed before her, and felt something crack inside her chest. "Please," she thought again. "Please let it be his. Please let the dates be wrong. Please let this child be the beginning of my redemption, not the evidence of my sin." She did not know, could not know, that she was carrying 3 children. She did not know that the blood test she would take years from now would reveal what she already, in her deepest heart, suspected. All she knew was that her husband was weeping with joy, and she could not weep with him. September 2000. The labor was long and difficult. Mornike had been in active labor for 16 hours when Dr. Ajayi made the decision to perform an emergency C-section. The triplets, were positioned in ways that made natural delivery impossible, and the fetal monitors were showing signs of distress. Adelaja stood in the corner of the operating theater, scrubbed and gowned, holding Mornike's hand as the surgical team worked. Her face was gray with exhaustion, her grip weak but persistent. She had not screamed during the labor. She had not made a sound beyond low, guttural moans. But now, as the surgeons cut through layers of tissue and muscle, she looked at him with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of everything unsaid. "The babies," she whispered. "Are they?" "They're coming," he said. "They're almost here. You're doing so well, Nike. You're so strong." The first cry pierced the air, then the second, then the third. 3 boys. 3 perfect, screaming, red-faced boys with their mother's nose and their mother's chin and lungs that could wake the dead. Adelaja wept. He wept as he held each son in turn, as the nurses cleaned and weighed and wrapped them in soft white blankets. He wept as Mornike, barely conscious, reached out her hand to touch their tiny faces. He wept as Dr. Ajayi clapped him on the shoulder and said, "Congratulations, Mr. Bamadil. You have a family." He named them, Alyawaismalor, Alyawasunfunmi, Alyawafarami. "God has done this. God has shown me favor. God has loved me." October 2000 to December 2000. The first 3 months were a blur of feedings and diaper changes and sleepless nights. Adelaja hired nurses, nannies, a cook, a driver, but he refused to delegate the hours between midnight and dawn. Those hours belonged to him and his sons. He learned to distinguish their cries. Alyawaismalor's was sharp, insistent, the cry of a child who knew exactly what he wanted and would not be denied. Alyawasunfunmi's was softer, more plaintive, a gentle request rather than a demand. Alyawafarami's was variable, sometimes a wail, sometimes a whimper, sometimes barely audible, as if he wasn't sure he had the right to ask for comfort. He learned their preferences. Alyawaismalor liked to be held upright, his cheek pressed against his father's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Alyawasunfunmi liked to be rocked, a gentle swaying motion that echoed the movement of the womb. Alyawafarami liked to be sung too. Hymns, mostly, the same ones Adelaja's mother had sung to him when he was small. "I need thee every hour," he sang, walking the darkened hallway with Alyawafarami in his arms. "Most gracious Lord, no tender voice like thine can peace afford." Alyawafarami's eyes drifted closed, his tiny fist unclenched, his breathing slowed. Adelaja looked at his son's face, the delicate curve of his cheek, the wisp of dark hair, the rosebud mouth, and felt his heart expand to accommodate a love he had not known he was capable of. "This is what my father felt," he thought. "This is what he tried to explain all those years ago when I was too young to understand. This is what it means to be a father." December 2000. The boys turned 3 months old. Adelaja threw a small party at the house. Immediate family only, his mother and Mornike's mother, and a few close friends. Femi came, bearing 3 identical teddy bears dressed in tiny agbatas. "You've gone soft," Femi said, watching Adelaja bounce Alyawaismalor on his knee. The great Adelaja Bamadil, billionaire contractor, singing nursery rhymes and changing diapers. "I prefer evolved," Adelaja said. "It sounds more dignified." Femi laughed, but his eyes were serious. He was watching Mornike across the room, where she sat on the sofa with her mother, Alyawafarami, asleep in her arms. Her face was peaceful, her smile genuine. She looked like a woman who had finally found her place in the world. "She seems happy," Femi said carefully. She is happy. We both are. Adelaja followed his friend's gaze. Why do you always watch her like that? Femi was quiet for a long moment. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. Adelaja's voice was gentle, but there was steel beneath it. You've been asking me about her since before the wedding. Are you sure she's faithful? Are you sure? I thought it was just your protective nature. Your way of looking out for me. He paused. But it's more than that, isn't it? Femi set down his drink. Laja, whatever you think you saw, whatever you think you know. Adelaja shifted Malor to his other knee, meeting his friend's eyes. She is my wife. She is the mother of my children. Whatever happened before we married, it doesn't matter. The past is the past. You don't know what happened. I don't need to know. I trust her. He held Femi's gaze. And I need you to trust her too. Not for her sake, for mine. I can't spend my marriage wondering if my best friend is waiting for my wife to fail. Femi was silent. The baby in Adelaja's arms made a small, contented sound. Across the room, Mornike laughed at something her mother said. Okay, Femi said finally. For you. I'll trust her. Thank you. But Laja, Femi paused, choosing his words with care. If there ever comes a day when you need to know the truth, when you need to hear what I saw, I won't volunteer it, but I won't lie to you either. Not anymore. Adelaja looked at his friend, the man who had stood beside him through his father's death, his mother's stroke, the lean years and the abundant ones. The man who had kept a secret for a year and would keep it forever, if that was what Adelaja wanted. There won't be such a day, Adelaja said. But if there is, I know where to find you. Femi nodded. He picked up his drink. He did not speak of the night before the wedding again. December 18th, 2000. Their first anniversary. Adelaja planned a quiet evening. Dinner at the house. Just the two of them. The boys sleeping upstairs under the nanny's watchful eye. He cooked himself. Grilled lobster, coconut rice, plantains fried to golden perfection. He set the table with the good china, lit candles, opened a bottle of the Dom Perignon they had not finished on their wedding night. Mornike came downstairs in a red dress he had never seen before, her hair swept up, her lips painted the same shade as the roses he had placed on the dining table. You look, he couldn't find the words. So do you? She smiled, and for once, the smile reached her eyes. Happy anniversary, Laja. Happy anniversary. They ate. They talked. They laughed at memories from the past year, the chaotic first weeks with triplets, the disastrous attempt at baby-led weaning, the night Malor had somehow escaped his crib and crawled all the way to the front door before anyone noticed. I thought I knew what love was, Adelaja said, his voice soft. Before you, before the boys. I thought I understood it. But this past year, he shook his head. I didn't know anything. I was a child playing at adulthood. You and the boys have taught me what it really means to love someone. Mornike set down her fork. Laja, I'm not saying this to pressure you. I want you to know. He reached across the table, took her hand. Whatever mistakes we've made, whatever challenges lie ahead, I choose you. Every day, I choose you. And I will keep choosing you for the rest of my life. She looked at his hand covering hers, his wedding band gleaming in the candlelight. She thought about the past year, his patience, his kindness, his unwavering faith in her. She thought about the secret she carried, the weight that never quite lifted, the fear that whispered in the darkest hours of the night. Tell him, the voice urged. Tell him now. He deserves to know. You owe him the truth. I have something I need to tell you, she said. He waited. She opened her mouth. The words were there, pressing against her teeth, demanding release. I slept with another man the night before our wedding. I don't know if the boys are yours. I don't know if I've been lying to you since the moment we said, I do. But his hand was warm on hers, and his eyes were full of trust, and his face was so open, so vulnerable, so certain of her goodness. I love you, she said. That's all. I just wanted you to know that I love you. His smile was radiant. I know, he said. I've always known. He raised her hand to his lips and kissed it. She watched him, this good man who believed in her so completely, and felt the weight of her unspoken confession settle deeper into her chest. Someday, she promised herself, someday I'll be brave enough to tell him the truth. Someday I'll deserve the love he gives me so freely. Someday. But someday did not come. 2001 to 2003. The years passed. The boys grew from infants to toddlers, from toddlers to little boys with strong opinions and loud laughs, and their mother's nose, their mother's chin, their mother's everything. Adelaja documented every milestone in leather-bound albums, each photograph carefully labeled with date and event. Semi's first steps, January 15th, 2001. Son's first words, March 3rd, 2001. Farami sleeps through the night, June 22nd, 2001. He taught them to say please and thank you. He taught them to share. He taught them that strength was not in fists but in kindness, that a man's word was his bond, that family was not about blood but about who showed up. He took them to Abadan to visit their grandmother. His mother, still struggling to speak after her stroke, held each boy in turn and touched their faces with her trembling hands. "My children," she said, the words slow and thick. "My children's children." Adelaja wept. His sons looked at him with confusion, then patted his cheeks with their small, sticky hands. "Daddy crying," said Alya Waismalor. "Daddy is happy," Adelaja said. "Daddy is the happiest man in the world." Femi watched. He watched at birthday parties and Christmas dinners and Sunday visits. He watched the boys grow. Alya Waismalor serious and analytical. Alya Wasunfunmi quiet and observant. Alya Wafarami sensitive and creative. He watched Adelaja pour himself into them, his time and money and heart, and he saw how fatherhood had transformed his friend, softened him, given him a joy that Femi had never seen in any other man. And he wondered. He wondered about the night before the wedding, the silver Corolla in the car park, the 14th floor. He wondered about the man Mornike had met, the secret she carried, the possibility that the children Adelaja loved so completely were not his own. He wondered, and he said nothing. But the question lingered, year after year, like a splinter he could not remove. "You sure say she faithful? Are you sure? Are you sure?" December 2003. Bayo came back. Mornike saw his name on her phone and felt her stomach drop. For years since the wedding. For years since the night before. For years of being Adelaja's wife, of mothering 3 boys, of living a life so comfortable and secure that sometimes she forgot to breathe. For years of burying the past, and now it was calling her name. "Bayo, I'm in Lagos again. Just for Christmas. I know I shouldn't contact you. I know, but I can't stop thinking about you." She did not reply. "Bayo, please, Nike. Just to see you. 1 hour. I'll be at Eco Hotels, same place. Tuesday afternoon. If you don't come, I'll understand." She deleted the message. She blocked his number. She went to the kitchen and helped the cook prepare dinner and listened to her sons argue over which cartoon to watch and tried to convince herself that the flutter in her chest was indigestion. But that night, lying beside her sleeping husband, she could not stop thinking about him, about his voice, his hands, the way he had looked at her in the hotel room and said, "I need to see you, Nike. Please." "It doesn't mean anything," she told herself. "He's a ghost from my past. A mistake I made when I was young and stupid. I'm not that woman anymore." But she remembered his smile. She remembered the taste of the wine he had poured. She remembered the way he had said her name, for syllables drawn out like a prayer. "Nike, Nike, Nike." Tuesday came. Adelaja was in Kano for a week, negotiating a contract for a new shopping complex. The boys were at school. The house was quiet. Mornike stood in her closet, surrounded by clothes she had not chosen and jewelry she had not asked for, and tried to decide what to wear. "Don't go," a voice said. "Stay home. Call a friend. Go to the market. Do anything except get in that car." But her hands were already reaching for a dress. Blue. Simple. Nothing Adelaja had bought her. She pulled it over her head, fastened her watch, the watch with diamonds around the face, the watch her husband had given her in Dubai, and walked out the door. She did not look back. The side entrance of Eco Hotels was exactly as she remembered it. Dim, anonymous, unremarkable. She slipped through the service door, pressed the button for the service elevator, watched the floor numbers change with each lurching ascent. 3, 5, 7, 9, 12, 14. Room 1412. She knocked. The door opened. Bayo stood before her, older now, graying at the temples, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 4 years ago. He smiled, and something in her chest gave way. "Nike." "Bayo." She crossed the threshold. This time, she did not hesitate. She did not hesitate. Weeks passed. Adelaja returned from Kano. The rhythm of family life resumed. School runs, bedtimes, Saturday outings. Mornike moved through the days mechanically, grateful for the chaos of 3 active boys that left little time for quiet reflection. Then she realized she was pregnant. Her hand pressed against her stomach. She counted weeks, traced backwards, did the mathematics of conception. Adelaja had been away when this child was made. There was only one possibility. She began to call her husband, her voice carefully casual. Please come home. I miss you. The boys miss you. Please, Laja. He cut his trip short. He wanted to see her. He always wanted to see her. She met him at the door with a kiss. She reached for the salt crackers on the counter, the same craving she'd had with the triplets, and saw him notice. Saw something flicker across his face, recognition, then something else. Something she could not name. That night, she initiated lovemaking. He responded. He held her, kissed her, did everything he had always done. But his mind was elsewhere, circling a question he had never asked. Femi's words came back to him. All the times his friend had asked. You sure say she faithful? Are you sure? Are you sure? The Unraveling. January 2004. Saturday afternoon. Adelaja came into the playroom where the boys were building a Lego city. At 6, they were full of questions and observations, their voices overlapping as they explained their architectural choices. Daddy, see. I made a bridge, said Alyaw's son Funmi. It goes over the water. Daddy, my building has 20 floors, said Alyawa Farami. Higher than yours. Daddy, Farami copied me, said Alyawa Smalor. Didi not. Did too. Adelaja smiled. Who wants ice cream? The boys erupted in cheers. They abandoned Legos, scrambled for shoes, jostled each other at the door. Adelaja led them to his Mercedes, buckled them into their seats, and drove. Not to Coldstone. To the DNA Diagnostics Center in Acacia. Daddy, why are we at the hospital? Alyawa Smalor asked. Are we sick? No, my love. We're just doing a checkup. Like when you go to the doctor to make sure your body is strong. But I don't want injection. No injection. I promise. He held their hands as they walked inside. He filled out the forms with steady fingers. He sat with them in the waiting room, reading them stories from his phone, laughing at their jokes. When the technician called them in, Adelaja went with each boy, held each small hand, whispered encouragement. He watched the swab touch the inside of their cheeks, watched them grimace and then forget. He did the same for himself. 1 week, they told him. Results in 1 week. That week was the longest of Adelaja's life. He went to work. He attended meetings. He ate meals with his family. He played with his sons, tucked them into bed, kissed their foreheads. He lay beside his wife and stared at the ceiling and did not sleep. He thought about his sons' first words. Dada. All 3 of them, within days of each other. He thought about their first steps. Alyawa Smalor at 11 months, wobbling across the nursery floor. Alyawa son Funmi a week later, determined and steady. Alyawa Farami last, cautious, waiting until he was sure. He thought about the night Alyawa Farami had a fever of 104, and Adelaja had held him in a lukewarm bath at 3 a.m., singing hymns his mother used to sing, praying to a god he wasn't sure was listening. He thought about all the times he had told them, I am your father. Nothing can change that. Nothing. On Friday, he drove alone to the diagnostic center. The envelope was thick, official, sealed with the lab's insignia. Adelaja sat in his car in the parking lot, engine running, air conditioning blowing cold against his face. He opened the envelope. He read the first page. He read it again. Probability of paternity, 0% for all 3 subjects. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of all 3 children. He folded the papers carefully, slid them back into the envelope, and placed the envelope on the passenger seat. Then he put his head on the steering wheel and wept. The confrontation. January 2004. He drove to Eco Hotels. Femi was in his office, reviewing banquet schedules, when Adelaja walked in without knocking. His friend's face was gray, his eyes red-rimmed, and Femi knew before a word was spoken. You knew, Adelaja said. His voice was quiet, steady. All these years. You knew. Femi stood slowly. Laja, you asked me, over and over. Are you sure she's faithful? You weren't asking. You were telling me. You were trying to tell me, and I wouldn't listen. I didn't know how to say it. Femi's voice cracked. It was the night before your wedding. She came here. She went to the 14th floor. I saw her car. I saw her. I didn't know who she was meeting, but I knew. I knew it wasn't you. Adelaja closed his eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Because you loved her. Because you were happy. Because I thought. Femi stopped, pressed his hand to his mouth. I thought maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just cold feet. Maybe after the wedding, she would forget him. I didn't want to destroy what you had. 14 years. Adelaja's voice was barely audible. 14 years of friendship. And you let me raise another man's children. They're not. Laja, they are your children. You are their father. You've been their father since the day they were born. Adelaja opened his eyes. They were dry now, empty. No, he said. I've been their caretaker. There's a difference. He turned and walked out. That evening, Adelaja came home. Mornike was in the kitchen, supervising dinner. She smiled when she saw him, but the smile faltered at his face. Laja, what's wrong? He didn't answer. He walked past her, into the living room, and sat down heavily on the sofa. The envelope was in his hand. What is that? Her voice was careful now, edged with something that might have been fear. Come and sit. She sat across from him, her hands clasped in her lap. He watched her face as he opened the envelope, as he withdrew the papers, as he placed them on the glass table between them. Read it. She read. Her face changed. First confusion, then comprehension, then horror. Her hands flew to her mouth. Laja, I can explain. Is there anything to explain? His voice was calm. Too calm. The DNA says they aren't mine. That's a fact. The only question is who. A mistake. The hospital made a mistake. 3 tests, Nike. 3 different children. All with the same result. All 0%. He leaned forward. Who is their father? She began to cry. It was once. Just once. The night before our wedding. He came back from UK. He wanted to see me. He said one last time. I was stupid. I was weak. I never meant. And after? She was sobbing now, her words broken and overlapping. After he came back again. For years ago. I don't know why. I don't know what's wrong with me. The pregnancy now. His voice was still calm. Whose is it? She looked at him, her face ravaged with tears, and could not speak. His, Adelaja said. You called me home so I could think it was mine. You were going to let me raise another man's child. Again. No, Laja, I swear, I was going to tell you. When? After the baby was born? After I paid for the hospital, the nursery, the school fees? When exactly were you going to tell me? She had no answer. Adelaja stood. He walked to the window, looked out at the lights of Lagos, the city he had built his life in. Behind him, his wife of 4 years, the mother of the children he had loved with his whole heart, wept and begged. What haven't I done for you? He asked. Not accusing, wondering. What haven't I given you? I gave you my name, my home, my life. I gave you children. I thought they were our children. I gave you everything I had, and it still wasn't enough. Laja, please. He turned. Pack your things. Take the boys. I want you out of this house by tomorrow morning. She stared at him. The boys, Laja, you can't mean. They love you. You're their father. You're the only father they've ever known. I know. His voice broke, just slightly, before he steadied it. And I love them. That's why I won't stop taking care of them. I'll send money every month. School fees, medical expenses, whatever they need. They will never lack for anything. Then why? Because I cannot look at you. His voice was raw now, the calm finally shattering. I cannot look at you and see the woman I married. I cannot sleep beside you and pretend I don't know what you did. I cannot raise these children with you and wonder every day whose face I'm really seeing. Nike, he said, and his voice was soft now, softer than it had been all evening. You have broken something that cannot be fixed. Please, just go. The leaving. January 2004. The boys didn't understand. They clung to Adelaja's legs, crying, asking why they had to leave, promising to be good, promising to share their toys, promising anything if Daddy would just let them stay. Daddy will see you soon, Adelaja said, kneeling to hold them. Daddy loves you. Daddy will always love you. You're going with Mummy for now, but I will see you every weekend. I will come to your sports days and your concerts. I will be at your birthdays and your graduations. Nothing changes that. Nothing. But why can't we stay here? Alya Waismalor wailed. Adelaja held him tighter. Because sometimes, he whispered, grown-ups have to live in different houses. But that doesn't mean we're not still a family. He kissed each forehead. He helped them into the car. He stood at the gate and watched them drive away, the boys' faces pressed against the rear window, their small hands waving goodbye. Then he went inside, sat down on the floor of the empty playroom, and did not move for a very long time. The money came every month, like clockwork. Mornike and the boys moved into a flat in Magodo. It was comfortable, not as grand as Adelaja's house. but far more than she could have afforded on her own. The rent was paid a year in advance. The school fees were covered. There was extra for food, for clothes, for the occasional treat. Adelaja came every Saturday. He took the boys to the park, to the cinema, to the beach. He helped them with their homework, listened to their stories, laughed at their jokes. He held Alyawasmalor when he fell off his bicycle and scraped his knee. He sat with Alyawasun Funmi through a bout of malaria, reading aloud until the fever broke. He stayed up late with Alyawafarami, who had inherited his own fear of the dark, and told him stories about brave princes and magical stars. He did not enter the flat. He did not speak to Mornike beyond the necessary exchanges about schedules and expenses. When she tried to apologize, to explain, to beg, he simply shook his head and walked away. "Please," she said one Saturday, catching his arm as the boys ran ahead to the car. "Laja, please. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I ruined everything. But I need you to know that I loved you. I did love you. I still. You loved me." He looked at her hand on his arm. "You loved me. And you lay with another man the night before our wedding. You loved me. And you conceived children with him and let me raise them as mine. You loved me. And when you fell pregnant with his child again, you tried to make me believe it was mine." His voice was not angry. It was tired. "Hello. That is not love, Nike. That is something else. And I don't know what it's called." He walked away. The silence of men. February 2004. Bayo heard about everything through the Lagos grapevine. He was in London now, engaged to a British-Nigerian woman named Tolu, a doctor with a warm smile and no knowledge of his past. Their wedding was scheduled for May. His life was neat, orderly, moving forward. Then his phone buzzed with a message from an old friend in Lagos. "You hear about Mornike? Her husband, throw her out. The triplets, they say, no be him Pekin. Everybody day talk." Bayo stared at the message. He thought about the night before the wedding, the afternoon 4 years later. He thought about the sons he had never met, never held, never supported in any way. He thought about Adelaja Bamadil, the man who had raised them, loved them, sacrificed for them, and now faced the world with the knowledge that everything he had believed about his family was a lie. Bayo's phone rang. Mornike. He did not answer. She called again, and again, and again. He turned off his phone, put it in his desk drawer, and did not look at it for 3 days. When he finally turned it back on, there were 17 missed calls and 12 text messages, each one more desperate than the last. He read them all, slowly, and then he deleted them. He never replied. May 2004. Bayo married Tolu in a small ceremony in Chelsea. His mother flew in from Lagos. His sisters came from Canada and Australia. Everyone was happy. Everyone was proud. He did not think about Mornike. He did not think about 3 boys with their mother's nose and chin, growing up in a flat in Magodo, learning from a man who was not their father how to be strong and kind and true. He told himself it was not his fault. He had not asked Mornike to lie to her husband. He had not asked her to keep the pregnancies, to raise the children as another man's. He had not promised her anything, not since those early years when he had been young and stupid and believed he could have everything he wanted without paying the price. He was older now. He understood that choices had consequences, that actions rippled outward in ways you could not predict or control. He chose to move forward, to build his new life, to leave the past in the past. Mornike sat alone in her flat, the boys asleep in their room, and stared at her silent phone. Bayo had not answered any of her calls. He had not replied to any of her messages. She had seen the wedding announcement in the papers. Bayo Akintola weds Dr. Talyalope Adebayo in intimate London ceremony, and felt something inside her finally, completely break. She had given him everything. Her youth, her trust, her body, her secrets. She had risked her marriage, her family, her future. For what? For a man who could not even pick up the phone when she needed him. And Adelaja, who sent money every month without fail. Adelaja, who came every Saturday with patient love and wounded eyes. Adelaja, who had given her 14 years of faithfulness and received nothing but lies in return. She thought about the night before her wedding. She thought about the hotel room, the wine, Bayo's hands on her face. She thought about the life she could have had, the simple, honest life with a man who adored her, and how she had traded it for a moment of weakness. Stupid, she whispered. Stupid, stupid, stupid. The word did not begin to cover it. Growing. 2004 to 2009. The years accumulated like harmattan dust, settling, layering, becoming part of the landscape. Adelaja built more bridges, more buildings, more monuments to his success. His company expanded to Ghana, to Kenya, to South Africa. His name appeared on Forbes lists and philanthropy gala programs. To the outside world, he was the picture of achievement, the self-made billionaire, the generous benefactor, the respected elder of Lagos commerce. But his friends noticed the change. He laughed less. He stayed later at the office. He no longer hosted the lavish Christmas parties that had once been the highlight of the social calendar. He lived for Saturdays. Every Saturday, he drove to Magodo. Every Saturday, he spent hours with his sons. Every Saturday, he poured into them everything he had: his knowledge, his patience, his unwavering love. He taught them to play chess. He taught them to debate without raising their voices. He taught them that education was the one thing no one could take from you. He taught them that a man's word was his bond, that kindness was not weakness, that the measure of a life was not what you accumulated but what you gave away. Oluwase Malor, the eldest by 7 minutes, was serious and analytical. He asked endless questions about Adelaja's buildings, how they stood, how they bore weight, how they reached toward the sky without falling. "Can I build with you someday, Daddy?" "Someday," Adelaja said, "you will build things I never dreamed of." Oluwaseun Funmi, the middle child, was quiet and observant. He watched his father's hands, the careful way he moved, the patience he brought to every task. When Adelaja fixed a broken toy or assembled a new bicycle, Oluwaseun Funmi stood at his elbow, absorbing everything. "Teach me," he said. Not a question, a request. Adelaja taught him. Oluwafarami, the youngest, was all feeling. He cried at sad movies, laughed until he couldn't breathe at his brother's jokes, drew pictures of their family with Adelaja at the center, larger than everyone else. "Is it true," he asked one Saturday, "that you're not our real father?" The other boys froze. The question hung in the air, heavy as stone. Adelaja set down his coffee. He looked at his youngest son, his most sensitive, his most vulnerable, and chose his words with care. "I am your father," he said. "I was there when you took your first breath. I held you before anyone else. I taught you to walk and talk and read. I am your father." "But blood," Oluwafarami began. "Blood is biology," Adelaja said. "Fatherhood is a million moments. It is every fever I stayed up with, every scraped knee I bandaged, every nightmare I chased away. It is every Saturday I drove here, every story I read, every prayer I whispered over your sleeping heads." He paused. His voice, when he continued, was softer. "Blood did not make me your father. Love did, and love does not change." Oluwafarami was quiet for a long time. Then he crossed the room and wrapped his arms around Adelaja's neck. "I love you, Daddy," he whispered. Adelaja held him and did not cry. December 2009. The boys turned 10. Adelaja threw them a party at the Eco Hotel's ballroom, with a bouncy castle, a magician, and a cake shaped like the Millennium Falcon. He invited their classmates, their teachers, their cousins from Ibadan. He did not invite Mornike, but he sent her a copy of the photographs. After the party, when the last guest had left and the boys were sleeping in the hotel suite, Adelaja stood alone on the balcony. The same balcony where Femi had stood 10 years ago, wrestling with a secret he could not tell. Femi was not here tonight. Their friendship had not survived the truth. It was not anger or blame. Adelaja understood why Femi had kept silent, understood the impossible choice his friend had faced. But understanding did not undo the years of deception, the questions unanswered, the moments when a word could have changed everything. Some things, even love could not repair. Adelaja looked out at the lights of Lagos, the city glittering beneath the harmattan haze. Somewhere in that vast sprawl, 3 boys slept, dreaming of Legos and bridges and their father's voice reading stories. His sons, not his blood, his sons. Blood did not make a father. He knew that now, with a certainty that had cost him everything to learn. He was their father. He had always been their father. He would always be their father. And that was enough. The Reckoning. 2010 to 2019. The boys became men. Adelaja watched it happen in increments that somehow felt sudden. The cracking voices, the broadening shoulders, the first tentative interests in girls. He watched them navigate adolescence with varying degrees of grace. and he was there for every milestone. The driving lessons, the WAC results, the jam forms, the university acceptance letters. Alia Waismalor chose architecture. Of course he did. He graduated from Unilag with first-class honors, and Adelaja wept at the ceremony, his son's name echoing through the hall. Alia Wasunfunmi chose engineering. He designed and built, just as he had as a boy watching his father's hands. UI gave him his degree, and Adelaja wept again. Alia Wafarami chose creative arts. He wrote stories, painted canvases, composed music. ABU nurtured his talent, and Adelaja wept hardest of all. My children, he thought, watching them collect their diplomas. My children's children. December 2014. Adelaja told them the truth. They were 16 now, old enough to understand, old enough to ask the questions they had been holding. He sat them down in his study, the same study where he had once reviewed DNA results that shattered his world, and spoke with the careful honesty they deserved. He showed them the papers. He explained what had happened, who their biological father was, why their mother had left. He answered their questions with patience, held space for their shock and confusion and grief. When he finished, there was a long silence. Then Alia Waismalor said, "You're our father. That's all that matters." Alia Wasunfunmi said, "Thank you for choosing us. Every day, you chose us." Alia Wafarami said nothing. He crossed the room and wrapped his arms around Adelaja and held on. They did not ask about Bayo. They did not want to know. He was a stranger, a name without a face, a man who had contributed genetic material and nothing else. Their father was here, in this room, gray-haired and trembling-handed, and more theirs than any blood relation could ever be. The boys graduated. They found jobs, apartments, partners. They called Adelaja every Sunday without fail, and they came home for Christmas and spent hours in his study, talking about their work, their worries, their dreams. He didn't slow down. There was still too much to do, too much to teach, too much love to give. Mornike lived alone in the Magodo flat. The boys visited her on holidays, dutiful and polite. They called her mummy, helped with her groceries, fixed her leaking taps. But their hearts were elsewhere. She watched them grow from a distance, always on the periphery of their lives. She had no one to blame but herself. The money still came, every month, without fail. Adelaja had never stopped. Even after the boys became adults, even after they started earning their own incomes, the deposits continued. More than enough for her needs, more than she deserved. She had tried, over the years, to thank him, to apologize, to explain the inexplicable. He received her words with quiet courtesy and said nothing in return. She thought about him every day, the way he had looked at her on their wedding day, full of hope and certainty, the way he had held their sons, his sons, with such tender, complete love, the way his face had crumpled when he read the DNA results, as if something essential inside him had died. She had killed something that night in the hotel room. She had not known it then, not really. She had thought it was a secret she could carry, a mistake she could bury. She had not understood that secrets have weight, that mistakes have consequences, that some betrayals cannot be undone. "I'm sorry," she whispered into the darkness of her empty flat. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." The words had no power anymore. They had been said too many times, in too many ways, to a man who had heard them all and could not forgive. But maybe, she thought, forgiveness was not the point. Maybe the point was to live with what she had done, to carry the weight of it every day, to become someone who would never again trade love for weakness. Maybe the point was to finally, truly understand. December 2024. 25 years since the wedding. Adelaja sat in his garden, watching the sun set over Lagos. The harmattan wind was blowing, carrying dust and memories. In the kitchen, his sons were preparing Christmas dinner, their voices carrying through the open window. "Daddy said to use less salt. Daddy doesn't know anything about jollof rice." "I'm telling him you said that." "Traitor." Adelaja smiled. He closed his eyes and felt the warmth of the fading sun on his face. He thought about his life, the successes and failures, the joys and sorrows, the choices he had made and the choices that had been made for him. He thought about the night before his wedding, when his best friend had watched his bride walk into a hotel room and said nothing. He thought about the years of happy ignorance, raising children he believed were his own. He thought about the moment of discovery, the shattering of everything he had thought he knew. And he thought about what came after. He had lost his wife. He had lost his best friend. He had lost the version of his life that he had believed in, the comfortable narrative of husband and father and family man. For a time, he had thought those losses would define him, that he would be, forever, the man who had been betrayed. But that was not the whole story. He had gained 3 sons, not through biology, not through legal documents, not through any formal process of adoption. He had gained them through 6,000 Saturdays, through countless bedtimes and sick days and homework sessions, through the slow, patient work of showing up again and again, until showing up became the very definition of love. He had gained a different understanding of fatherhood, not as inheritance but as choice, not as accident but as intention. He had learned that blood was the smallest part of family, that the ties that bind are woven from attention and sacrifice and the stubborn refusal to walk away. He had gained, in the end, himself, not the self he had been before the betrayal. That man was gone, would never return, but a different self, weathered and scarred, and perhaps deeper for the breaking. His phone buzzed. A message from Always Malor, dinner ready. You coming inside, or you want us to bring you plate? He typed back, coming. But he didn't move. Not yet. The sun was almost down now, the sky bruised purple and gold. In the distance, he could hear the sounds of the city, horns, generators, the distant thrum of nightlife beginning to stir. The same sounds he had heard 25 years ago, standing at his penthouse window, believing that tomorrow would bring the beginning of his happiness. Tomorrow had brought something else, something harder, something, perhaps, more true. He thought about more Nike, not with anger anymore. The anger had burned itself out years ago, leaving something quieter in its wake. Not forgiveness, exactly. He did not know if he had forgiven her. He did not know if forgiveness was even possible for a betrayal of that magnitude. But he no longer wished her ill. He no longer relived the discovery with fresh pain. He no longer wondered what he could have done differently, what signs he should have seen, what words he should have said. He simply accepted that she had made choices he would never understand. Accepted that his love for her, real as it had not been enough to hold her. Accepted that some questions have no answers, some wounds leave scars, some stories do not end the way we hoped. He accepted, and he continued. That was the only way forward. Daddy, Alya Wafarami's voice, calling from the kitchen. The rice is getting cold. Adalaja opened his eyes. He pushed himself up from the garden chair, his joints protesting, his old body reminding him that it had carried him through 60 years of Lagos life. He walked toward the house, toward the light and warmth and noise of his sons, his daughters-in-law, his grandchildren, 3 new babies with his son's eyes and his son's smiles, and his son's stubborn insistence on calling him grandpa, even though no blood connected them at all. Blood did not make a father. Blood did not make a family. Love did. Presence did. The daily, unglamorous, unending work of showing up for the people you loved, again and again, until showing up became the very breath of your life. Adalaja stepped through the doorway. Coming, he said. I'm coming.